The hangar was quiet, except for the hum of machinery and the occasional hiss of pneumatic tools. Rays of late afternoon light streamed through the massive observation windows, catching the dust that floated lazily in the air. Jaren wiped his hands on a rag, the scent of machine oil clinging stubbornly to his clothes. Across from him, Leora's armor lay in pieces on the workbench, scarred from countless battles, but still proud, still defiant. Jaren had seen her in action before. Everyone had. Liara was a warrior whose reputation spanned sectors. Stories of her victories circulated like legends, each tale more exaggerated than the last. But seeing the damage to her armor in person, the tiny cracks and scorched plating, made the scale of her battles real. He picked up a dented shoulder guard, turning it over in his hands. "You really put yourself through hell this time," he muttered. Leora stepped closer, her presence filling the room even before she spoke. "Fix it," she said, her voice steady but low, like a blade sheathed in velvet. "I don't need compliments." Jaren felt a faint shiver, not from fear, but from the intensity radiating from her. It was something about the way she moved, confident, lethal, unyielding, that made even experienced soldiers instinctively step back. He set to work, welding and polishing, listening to the soft hiss of sparks as he repaired the microfractures in the armor's energy conduits. As he worked, he couldn't help but glance up at her occasionally. Leora wasn't just a warrior. She was a force of nature. The armor she wore wasn't just protection, it was part of her identity. Each dent and scratch told a story, and somehow he felt privileged to touch it, to restore it. "Careful with the plating there," she said suddenly, her voice carrying a faint edge. "That piece is older than you think. Been through 3 campaigns, I wasn't supposed to survive." Jaren nodded without looking up. "I've got it." He smoothed the jagged dent with precise movements, feeling the subtle resistance of the metal beneath his fingers. His hands were steady, but there was a rhythm in his chest that betrayed his focus. He had repaired many things in his life engines, ships, drones, but this felt different. When he finally finished, he stepped back, wiping sweat from his brow. The armor gleamed as though it had never been harmed. The subtle scratches were gone, the plating smooth, the energy conduits realigned. He turned to her, expecting a nod or perhaps a curt acknowledgement. Instead, Leora's gaze locked onto him. Her eyes were sharp, intelligent, and uncomfortably intense. "Don't pretend that contact meant nothing," she said, her voice low but unwavering. Jaren froze. For a moment, he wondered if he had misheard. Her tone wasn't accusation, but it wasn't casual either. It carried weight, as if she were stating a fact that demanded acknowledgement. I was just fixing your armor," he said carefully, unsure how to navigate the sudden tension. Leora stepped closer, tilting her head slightly. "You touched it," she said, almost whispering. "And for a brief moment, so did you." Her eyes didn't waver from his. "That matters. Don't act like it doesn't." He blinked. There was no malice in her words, only clarity, an understanding that something had shifted in that simple act of repair. He wanted to respond, to explain, but the right words felt elusive. Instead, he offered a small, awkward smile. "I guess it does, then." She didn't smile. She never smiled, not in the way humans did. But there was a softness in her expression that hadn't been there before, a vulnerability hidden beneath the armor and the persona of the invincible warrior. For a long moment, neither spoke. The hum of the hangar, the distant clanging of tools in other bays, filled the silence. Then, almost imperceptibly, Leora shifted her weight, resting her hands on the edge of the workbench. "You're different from the others," she said, her voice quieter now. "Most people see me and only see the armor, the victories, the reputation. You," she trailed off, but the implication was clear. "You see more." Jaren felt a flush rise to his cheeks, but he forced himself to keep his voice steady. I see what's in front of me. That armor? It's more than metal. It's you. She looked at him then, not with the sharpness of a warrior evaluating an ally, but with something deeper. Curiosity, perhaps, or caution. Do you know what that means? She asked. It means I respect it, he said, choosing his words with care. And I respect you. Leora's shoulders relaxed slightly, though the tension in her stance didn't fully dissipate. Few do, she said. Most fear me. Some want to use me. Others just talk. Her gaze softened, just a fraction, as she added, but you act, you fix, you make things whole. There was a silence after that, the kind that carried more weight than any conversation could. Jaren realized he was holding his breath. He had been trained for battle, for crisis, for the unforgiving vastness of space. But nothing in his training had prepared him for this, the simple, terrifying intimacy of being seen by someone like Leora. He finally stepped forward, offering her the armor. It's ready, he said, his voice steady despite the flutter in his chest. She took it with one hand, testing the weight as though she could judge his skill through touch alone. Then she donned it, piece by piece, moving with the precision of someone who had lived her life in combat. When the last gauntlet clicked into place, she turned to him, fully armored and imposing once again, yet still somehow carrying that trace of vulnerability. You did well, she said. Better than I expected? Jaren shrugged, though he couldn't hide the pride in his expression. I always do. She tilted her head, considering him. You're human, she said finally, almost as if stating an obvious fact. Fragile. Yet here you are, touching what I thought only others could. You repair without fear, without arrogance. That's unusual. Jaren felt a warmth spread through him, the kind that came from being acknowledged by someone extraordinary. Maybe humans are better than they get credit for, he said, a hint of humor in his tone. Leora's eyes narrowed, not in anger, but in calculation. Perhaps, she said. Then, after a pause, she added, You've changed something today. Don't think I'll forget it. He nodded, unsure what that meant, but not daring to question it. There was a power in her presence, in her words, that demanded respect. And yet, for the first time, he sensed an invitation, subtle but undeniable. To step into her world. The day slipped into evening, and the hangar lights flickered on, casting a soft glow over the repaired armor. Jaren continued to tidy his tools, his movements automatic, but his mind lingered on Leora's words. The contact, the touch, the acknowledgement, it all meant something. More than he could articulate. Finally, Leora spoke again. I leave for the front tomorrow, she said. You should rest. I will, he said, though he knew sleep would be difficult. His thoughts were still tangled with her presence, with the weight of that moment. She stepped closer, close enough that he could feel the faint heat radiating from her through the armor. And remember, she said softly, almost to herself, don't pretend it meant nothing. Jaren met her gaze, steady this time. I won't, he said. She gave a small nod, then turned and walked toward the exit of the hangar. Her silhouette, framed by the bright light outside, was both intimidating and beautiful. Jaren watched her go, feeling the subtle pull of something he couldn't yet name, something that went beyond admiration or respect. When the doors closed behind her, the hangar felt emptier, quieter. Yet, paradoxically, it also felt charged, alive with the memory of her presence. He touched the edge of the workbench, where her armor had rested, and realized that the act of fixing something could sometimes do more than restore. It could connect, could bridge the gap between two very different beings. Jaren leaned back against the workbench, closing his eyes for a moment. He knew tomorrow would bring battles, both on distant worlds and in hearts and minds. But for tonight, he allowed himself to savor the connection, the rare and fleeting acknowledgement from someone extraordinary. And he understood, in a way he hadn't before, that even in a universe filled with war, technology, and chaos, there were moments where humanity, his humanity, could touch something beyond itself, something larger, stronger, and far more alive.